All right, so enabling the hybrid cloud. So we're going to talk about getting access to resources in the hybrid cloud, and we're going to look at the appliances that we believe will be important to be able to provide this sort of access. My name is Scott Roberts. I'm a program manager in the Windows Core networking team, and I'm here today with my partner.
Hi, I'm Sharad Kailasam, also a program manager in the Windows networking team.
And the key goal that we have for you today is we'll go through and define what we mean by hybrid cloud connectivity. We'll look at how Server 8 provides this connectivity using a new unified remote access role that we have shipping now for the first time inside of Server 8. And we'll also talk to how we go about building these remote access appliances and the opportunities we believe that our ISV and our IHV partners actually have at helping us partner together to provide these solutions to our customers. Now, when we look at what does it mean to provide a remote access appliance, what we first want to do, though, is talk about kind of the landscape a little bit. So I have a few slides just to kind of review the terminology that we're using here, the definitions, and some of the challenges and problems that we're trying to solve. When customers talk to us about the challenges they are facing, what they are telling us is that increasingly the resources that their users want to have access to are no longer just located physically on-site in the corporate network. We're referring to that as the private cloud in this talk. Those resources have moved outside of the corporate headquarters to branch offices located around the world, potentially to public instances of those clouds where they take those resources off their on-premise networks, their private clouds, and move them to these public hosted facilities, and we're calling that public cloud here. So we're looking at the movement of these server resources from on-prem locations to cloud locations, really focusing on this as infrastructure as a service type of public cloud. Now, when you start looking at the requirements to allow users to have access to these resources, be it in the private cloud, in the public cloud, that becomes a very difficult perimeter for them, for organizations to manage. They're increasingly having to poke more and more holes through this perimeter that drives up the amount of work that the corporations have to do to secure those networks, to audit those networks, make sure they're compliant, and try to defend those networks against increasingly sophisticated advanced persistent threats that exist. Now, while those resources are starting to get moved around, simultaneously with that, the users are more mobile than they were ever before. Users are no longer just need access from home or from another branch office. They want access from their hotel, from the coffee shops, and they want access from both managed and unmanaged devices inside the corporate environment. That data no longer is just living in some server inside of your data warehouse on-prem. It's now potentially, as we said, moved to the cloud, or potentially even moved down to those devices locally, and it also needs to be secure as it's being transited between the corporate network and the local device and between the corporate networks. So there's a lot of challenges that corporations are facing in this environment today. Now that's a little discussion of some of the challenges that they're facing, but what do they want in a perfect world? If they could have anything they wanted in terms of how the system should work, what they're telling us is that it should just work, is the bottom line. In some of the earlier keynotes, we talked about how the system should just work. It should be natural. It should do what the users just expect it to do. They shouldn't have to relearn how to access resources just because they happen to have left the office and are now working from home or working from a coffee shop. Now, there are solutions for this today. How many of you today use some form of traditional VPN to get access to your corporate network? All right. Now, what IT pros tell us is that those traditional VPN systems and the agents that they have to deploy and install are one of the #1 support call generators into their help desks inside of their organizations. So we got to find a way to make it easy to get access to these resources while at the same time not increasing the costs and hopefully reducing those costs concurrently. Now, while we want to make sure that these resources are available and make it super easy to get access to those resources, we got to make sure that we make those clients still always up to date, always healthy, so that we can meet our compliance obligations at the same time. So we have these demands coming from our users, our customers, and our demands coming from our IT professionals. So that's kind of the landscape that we find ourselves in. And what we're going to do in this next demonstration, before we dive into the technology, what I want to do is actually show you what we believe is a solution that provides many of these capabilities, and that's our direct access solution. What we're going to show is how this compares and contrasts substantially to those existing VPN networks that you are using today. One of the biggest differentiating factors is that it's always connected. As long as the user's machine is connected to the internet, our connection is going to be available to that remote device, and it's going to be a bidirectional connection. Instead of that machine only being able to be reached when the VPN connection is established, it's very opportunistically and kind of hard to count on, those devices will be able to be always up to date, always managed, always healthy. So let me show you what this looks like. What I have is a pre-configured client machine that happens to be outside of my corporate network. This particular client machine is at a home network, just a simulated sort of home network connected to the internet. I've logged into this machine already using my name and password. I've not provided any additional credentials at this point, and I've not initiated or manually established a connection to my corporate network. As a user, I might even have my home page set to an internal website for my corporation. And what I can do is, as I've logged in to my machine and bring up Internet Explorer, it will automatically be able to connect to my corporation's data center and the SharePoint site or website that I have set as my home page without any separate user interactions. Think about where you might be reading your email, and inside of this email is a URL, potentially even a short name URL. And you're sitting at home, you want to get access to that site. Think about the experience that you all have to go through today, in many cases, to have access to that. You have to remember, oh, I'm outside, I need to dial up my VPN, I need to make sure it's available, maybe it's a separate name and password for my organization, and then I can have access to that. We want to take that thought process or that return on investment calculation away from our users and allow them to instantly to be able to click that link, not have to think about it, and it comes up automatically. So in this case, I've access to my primary corporation site. It's in Washington in this demonstration, and it's come up instantly. Now, websites are kind of easy. Let's look at something maybe a little more challenging. So what I've also done is that I've established a connection through remote desktop to one of my machines inside my corporate network. In this case, it happens to be a machine called DC1. My desktop experience is fully able to be experienced remotely here, so this could be your desktop back at your office. And the next thing that I'm going to show is this bidirectional capability. Because so far what you've seen in terms of the traditional VPN, after you've established that connection, it could be somewhat similar. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to make this demonstration a little tougher. What I'm going to do is actually access from this remote machine. So imagine you're sitting at a remote machine, or you're sitting at a machine on the corporate network, and you want to reach out to that remote client machine. You want to retrieve files from that machine. You want to help that user perform a procedure. You want to place files there. You want to pull compliance logs. Lots of different scenarios you might imagine. What I can do is access a share that I've created on that machine, and I access that share just as easily as that if that were a machine on my corporate network physically. But in this case, that client is across the internet. And I have bidirectional access to this. The other thing that's interesting to note here before I leave this remote machine is the fact that I was able to access this resource using a short name. If I look at the name in the title bar here, I used DC1. I didn't use an FQDN in this case. I actually used a very short name. Normally those names would only work when you're on the corporate network, and the users would have to remember with traditional VPN generally some sort of translated URL when they're on the outside of the network. Here I'm able to use the things that I already know in a natural way to access the corporate network. Now if I hop back to my client machine and look at my local file system and go to that files share that I created, we can see that the file that I created by the server is located there on the local machine. And that is the primary experience for the direct access user. We have some folks, for example, that have already set up the devices that you received and joined them to the corporate network, and being able to activate direct access so that as they log in to their slates, they just have access to the corporate network. They don't have to do anything else after logging in initially. So what I just showed was access to this, what we're calling private cloud in this picture. I used a remote access appliance running as an entry point into that network. Now we have the capability of not only supporting a single location or a single entry point to a set of resources, but a lot of organizations have multiple offices that spread throughout multiple geographies. And in Windows Server 8, Direct Access supports the capability of having multiple entry points, or if you will, multiple sites. Now, instead of being a branch office or another office somewhere else in the world, this just as easily could be a set of resources that you've moved to a public cloud. This could be space that you've rented with a hosting provider of some sort as a recovery site in terms of disaster recovery. In this particular case, I have resources that I've placed there, and the client can have access directly to those resources. Increasingly, though, you also, when you have multiple locations, you also need to connect those locations together. And so commonly what you see then is an additional set of resources or servers dedicated to that site-to-site connectivity. And this is the picture for a lot of organizations today. They have separate infrastructure for remote access from site-to-site access. And what we believe in Server 8 increasingly will be important to customers is to be able to purchase the capability to be able to unify these things together, to be able to bring together the site-to-site cross-premise connectivity with the remote access connectivity. And that's what the Server 8 remote access role provides. It allows for a single capability of accessing these resources, be it in the private cloud, be it in the public cloud, and the clients will automatically figure out the right entry point to use. This also works for traditional unmanaged clients, machines that are not joined to your corporate domain as well. So how many of you would like to see that in action? Nobody here would like to see that in action? How many of you would like to see that in action? Yeah, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, I warned you. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and close my entry point here. And what I'm going to do is show the new unified connection status inside of Windows Client, Windows 8. What I see here is my corporate connection, and I can see that I'm connected. Where it says corporate connection, this could literally be any customizable string that you provide during the creation of your environment. Now, instead of actually failing one side and causing a side-to-side failover to occur, what I'm going to do, I'm going to simulate that in this demonstration through a manual site selection. I have an integrated sort of connectivity status that I then can use to then select my other entry point. So in this case, I'm going to move from my private cloud in Washington to my public cloud, which is my France entry point, and I'm going to apply that. So at this point, what's going to happen is the client will disconnect from the Washington entry point, bring up a new connection to our France entry point, automatically authenticate to that new entry point, establish our connectivity to that entry point, and ensure that all of the authentication has been taken care of for us. Now, this user interface also supports the ability to collect logs in case something were to go wrong. Since we'd mentioned that this was a top support area for a lot of organizations, we did want to make sure that we reduce those support costs. So instead of having to send a user to a command prompt and type a bunch of esoteric commands to retrieve information, we have kind of one-stop shopping for connectivity and troubleshooting. They can simply click the Collect Logs button. An email logs link will appear. It can bring up the email client, attach the results, and can be sent to a pre-configured address that's populated in our wizard. So now if I go back to my Explorer here, and I open up IE, what we're going to be able to see is that I was still able to connect to that private cloud, but in this case, I arrived through my France entry point. So I was able to see that I'm now connected to my second site. I'm going through that second site, across that site-to-site connection to our primary data center, and as well as connecting to that same site, I also have connection to our servers in France. So I would have loved to have taken that picture instead of the Washington picture, but oh well. Now, let's take a look at what happened to my other connections that I have. Do you notice how this is just still there and working, and I didn't do anything else? This seamlessly auto-reconnected through my other entry point to the back-end location without prompting me for additional credentials, without causing me any headaches. The seamless connectivity nature of this, from my point of view, is really, really impressive. Now, I use the manual site selection, but imagine you had a site that had some type of problem. Right? This would automatically and seamlessly connect over to your other entry points, and the user wouldn't even have noticed anything had happened. So I don't know about you, but do you think that's pretty cool? Yeah, all right. You can clap. Clapping is allowed. All right. So those are so what we saw was the client moved from the first entry point to the second entry point and still was able to access the resources. So at this point, what we're going to do is spend a few minutes talking about, well, how did we make that happen? We looked at the experience. Now we want to talk about the technology. And at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Sharad to really dive into some of these details and show you how we've put these pieces together for you.
Thank you, Scott. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes to dive into the building blocks that make up our remote access solution in Windows Server 8. There are two key aspects to keep in mind, the first being connectivity and the second being security. So let's take a look at connectivity first. So as you saw from Scott's demo, the remote access connection it's always on. There's no user initiation. It just works. If you're connected to the internet, you're connected to your CorpNet. That is a very important thing to keep in mind. From an end user perspective, the usage model that the end user has to be aware of does not change whether he's actually physically located within his enterprise network and accessing those resources, or whether he's remote in a airport or a Wi-Fi hotspot. He would use the same behaviors that he would as when he's on the corporate network. The other aspect that Scott touched upon was lowered support costs. Now, why would there be lowered support costs with our remote access solution in Windows Server 8? For one thing, all the experiences from the end user perspective are natively built into Windows. Just think about that for a moment. It's natively built into Windows. There are no third-party agents which need to be deployed, managed, and supported on the client machines. Further, we've had strong customer feedback as well as internal feedback that one of the major generators of help desk support calls and associated costs are from these third-party agents which get installed. So we've eliminated the need for all these external moving parts and simplified the solution. Also, there's greater end-user satisfaction which results from the use of our solution as evidenced by internal as evidenced by our internal deployment of our remote access solution. The end-user satisfaction went up by over 30%. So that's another aspect. And finally, there are no changes which you need to make to your internal enterprise infrastructure. You just have to drop in the remote access server at the edge of your enterprise network, and that's it. You do not need to touch any of the internal resources on the internal network. And that is also a very key point. We've abstracted away a lot of the complexity from the IT administrators who are deploying these solutions. The second key aspect of our remote access solution is security. Scott already touched upon the always manageable and the improved compliance points, so I'm not going to belabor that. But it's important to realize that these clients, these remote clients, are connecting from a variety of different public, untrusted networks. And they are exchanging important corporate enterprise data which needs to be protected. And our remote access solution does afford that protection by providing user authentication as well as data encryption all the way from the client to the enterprise network. We do support a variety of different authentication and encryption models. The first being the edge model, where the client is, the user is authenticated and the data is encrypted from the client up to the edge of the enterprise network. The second important model is the end-to-end model, and this is where the client, the user is authenticated and the data is encrypted all the way from the client right up to the internal application server which resides within the enterprise network. And this is a key differentiator of our remote access solution. And this would be applicable for enterprises which require a higher level of security. And I will show you a demo of this in just a couple of minutes. And finally, we support a variety of hybrid models which encompass both the edge model as well as the end-to-end model. Finally, from a security standpoint, we support a variety of multi-factor authentication capabilities in Windows Server 8. We support smart cards, one-time passwords, as well as multi-factor auth using the Trusted Platform module, which is increasingly available in enterprise-grade laptops. And with that, I'm going to go to my first demonstration here. What I'm going to be showing you is a client on the a remote client, which will try to connect to application web servers within the private cloud and the public cloud. And these application servers have a strong authentication requirement on them. I'm initially going to show you that when I'm just logged in with my username password credentials, that this access fails. I'm then going to provide my OTP credentials and show you that once I've provided those credentials, the access to those resources actually succeeds. So let's see how that works in action. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring up a couple of web pages to the web servers which are actually enforcing this access. And these are going to fail. So let's just give it a couple of seconds for the access to time out. There you go. It failed. And why did it fail? It failed because these servers are enforcing strong authentication, and I just logged on with just my username and password. So it's not good enough to access these sites. So now what I'm going to do is provide my OTP credentials. So give it a minute to come up. Switch user. Right, and so I'm back at my logon tile. And at this point, I'd like to point out that we've partnered with our partners from Gemalto, James and Michael, if you could raise your hands, to bring this demo to life today. And it's important to realize that in addition to the inbox one-time password capabilities that Windows comes built with, partners, ISVs can customize the one-time password solutions to meet the specific needs of their customers. And that's what we're showing today. So I'm going to put in the password, put in my one-time password from the hardware token here, and bang, I'm logged in with my one-time password. Now, I'm now going to refresh access to the resources that failed before. Let me get that going. Boom, it worked. And again, it worked. So once I provided these strong authentication credentials, I was able to access these websites. And not only that, the data from the client is encrypted and authenticated all the way from the client to these application servers. And this is applicable for enterprises which have really strong security requirements. So that's my first demo. OK, so now switching gears, we're going to talk about remote access appliances and the role they play in the Windows Server 8 remote access solution space. first, let's talk about what is the need for remote access appliances from the point of view of an enterprise customer. Some networking and security professionals who deploy remote access solutions often prefer appliances as their deployment vehicle. Why do they do this? Appliances have an integrated, validated platform that provides the enterprise an easy, expedient way to deploy their remote access solution and get it up and running. And how do appliances achieve this? They come with a pre-tested, pre-validated, and fully supported platform that customers can easily deploy. And further, it can be customized to meet the customer's needs, even depending on the market segment. So we took a brief look at how at the remote access appliances from the point of view of the enterprise customer. Now we're going to look at it from the point of view of an appliance manufacturer. The first point I'd like to emphasize is that there's a huge business opportunity for appliance manufacturers to differentiate from competition with the Windows Server 8 remote access solution. There's a huge emphasis on hybrid cloud connectivity in the Windows Server 8 remote access solution space, and enabling appliances to participate in this space is going to be helpful to grow the appliance business. Further, we've greatly simplified the engineering process that is required to develop one of these appliances. We have very powerful management tools, including PowerShell. You've probably seen some talks earlier in the day as well, which talked about PowerShell and the great management capabilities we've built in that allow appliance manufacturers to take the inbox solutions that we've provided and further customize them to meet the needs of the customers. And finally, the appliance manufacturers get to ride the Windows Server 8 wave. There is going to be at Windows Server 8 launch, there will be a push for advertising and marketing, and there is a huge potential for appliance manufacturers to leverage the momentum behind this. And with that, I'm going to invite up George Davidson from N-Appliance, who we partnered with to develop a remote access appliance on top of Windows Server 8. George is going to talk to us about his experiences with developing the appliance on top of Windows Server 8, as well as what N-Appliance sees as the business opportunity in the remote access space. Thank you, George.
Thanks, Fred. Thing turned on? Can everybody hear me? My name is George Davidson. I'm in charge of product marketing at N-Appliance Networks. We are a Microsoft OEM partner. First of all, I'd like to apologize for being grossly overdressed for a Microsoft conference. I promise next time I will wear jeans. I'm a traditional sales and marketing guy, so old habits die hard. So a little bit about our company. We have been building server and appliance hardware for custom OEMs since 2002. We're located in the Silicon Valley. We have a large production facility there. We are one of the few manufacturers still manufacturing in the U.S. Since 2007, we've been building Windows security-based appliances. So we have several years of expertise building on Windows platforms, starting with the Server 2003 platform with ISA and IAG, and with our current products with the Server 2008 R2 platform with the TMG and UAG products. And more recently, as part of the TAP program, we have had the opportunity to develop a prototype remote access appliance based on Server 8. We have a good amount of direct access expertise. We've been deploying the first rev of direct access in a number of corporate networks, anywhere from SMBs, state and local, to large corporate enterprises with multiple international sites. And now I'd like to talk a little bit about the value proposition of the remote access appliance. So what is it that makes a remote access appliance built on a Windows platform unique? First of all, it's performance tuned and tested. So we've eliminated some of the things that might slow it down. We've built it on purpose-built hardware with certain hardware accelerators, and we've tested it all rigorously so that we have some performance metrics, and we can recommend certain concurrency usage numbers to customers that make it easier for them to size and scope and deploy the products. It's pre-integrated and security hardened. So everything comes packaged, the image is sealed, ready to go out of the factory. We try and make it as plug and play as possible. And security hardened, it is on the network edge. It's a remote access appliance, so it has to stand up to the most rigorous security challenges that are out there. I'd like to say that we do have some customers and some defense and military intelligence type customers that have been using our appliances for a number of years now, and they work great. They have not had a problem. We also build a number of value-added features onto our appliances. So anything from a backup and restore infrastructure to a lights out, out-of-band management, to additional consoles and wizards that help them get it up and running faster. This is some of the value add, some of the bells and whistles that us and appliances as an appliance manufacturer can add to our products. And finally, we offer world-class services around the hardware appliance play. So not only are we able to sell the hardware, we're also able to sell help desk, 8x5, 24/7, advanced hardware replacement. So if a customer has a hardware or a software problem, they come to us. It's the one throat to choke type of model. And in addition to that, we do some of the deployments as well as consulting around the whole deployment of the remote access solution. So our experience with Server 8 has been very good so far. We have a Windows image building process that we've refined over the years, with the 03, 08, and now with Server 8. And we've been able to plug in Server 8 to that process, and it's basically worked fine. A few tweaks here and there, but it's basically worked really well. And we've been able to build our prototype appliance, which is showcased on the floor, by the way, with the server and tools cloud area. We've been able to get that up and running, I'd say, within a matter of weeks.
So, George, it was easy for you to take Server 8 and be able to build an appliance off of this?
Absolutely.
And it met the needs of the most rigorous government and military security standards, even though it was running on Windows?
That's correct.
So that's great to hear. So thank you very much for those talking points. And it's great to hear from real customers and partners out there that we're working with that these things are actually possible. It's not just Microsoft up here telling you that these things are possible, but we have real-world folks that are in this business, making money, selling appliances, selling these solutions for remote access. And we think there can be a large community of those kind of folks like yourselves that can participate in this capability as well. So
one last point.
Yeah.
So the business opportunity that we see in this is, as an appliance manufacturer, you think everything's moving to the cloud. You might get a little bit hesitant that, okay, what's our future going to look like? But the future with us is as a cloud, secure access and secure remote access. So we're able to kind of take advantage of the Microsoft marketing push in the cloud as well as the Server 8 push that's going on right now. So thank you.
Thank you, George.
Thank you very much, George. That was great. It's always wonderful to hear a success story from our partners. So with that, let's talk a little bit about other related ecosystem opportunities. The first one is for the NIC vendors. There is an opportunity to build improved hardware acceleration support in the network interface cards. This greatly improves the CPU and throughput on the remote access appliances. And secondly, for the ISVs in the audience, there is a huge opportunity to build improved monitoring tools and provide IDS, IPS type functionality for IPsec inspection and traffic shaping. And with that, I'm going to show you a demonstration of our new and greatly improved direct access setup experience for Windows Server 8. We've taken the experience and made it really simple to deploy direct access. It's literally as simple as 3 clicks of a wizard, and you have direct access deployed. We've removed a number of barriers to entry for direct access and made it such that even an IT generalist can deploy direct access. And with that, let me just switch to the demo and show you what we've got here. And, oh, that's a wonderful question, Scott. The demo is actually running on our N appliance in the expo floor. So once you're done here, you should come down and visit us in Hall D in the server and cloud area. You'll see a big rack there, and that's where the appliance is, and that's where we're actually running this demo from. So let me switch over to the appliance. What I have up here is the remote access management console. We have a new wizard, which is a simple setup of direct access. It's called our Express wizard. So I'm going to start the configuration of direct access. So the first dialog which comes up asks me whether I want to deploy direct access. Direct access and the Microsoft VPN offering into a unified remote access server role. So it's all packaged into one unified server role. So for the purposes of the demo, I'm going to choose deploy only direct access. The system goes through some basic prereq checks, starts initializing configuration. Really what it's doing behind the scenes is it's checking out the number of network adapters which are connected on this machine. It's verifying the credentials of the user who's logged on and making sure that it can figure out what smart defaults it needs to enforce. Then it brings me to this screen where I get to choose what topology I want to deploy direct access in. We have a number of new options which we've introduced for Windows Server 8. So we have the edge topology, which was pre-existing. We now have the back topology as well as the single network adapter topology. The back topology is applicable for cases where you want to deploy direct access behind a front-facing firewall. And this is important to note because as long as you have deployed a secure web server, for instance, you can deploy direct access. You don't need any changes to your enterprise infrastructure. I want to emphasize that again. I said that earlier. I want to emphasize it again. No changes. So again, for the purposes of the demo, I'll select Edge. You see how it is pre-populated the name of the direct access server that I want to deploy. I hit Next, and that's it. I'm done with 3 simple clicks of the wizard with hardly any input needed from the administrator. I'm now able to deploy direct access. I'm going to hit Finish and let the install complete. And what's happening now is it's actually using PowerShell behind the scenes to set up the policy objects in Active Directory and author the policy, which is actually going to be pushed down to the clients. The PowerShell commandlets are running against creating group policy objects, creating IPsec policies, creating DNS policies, etc., behind the scenes. And you can see that it also creates the policies that Scott was showing you earlier, where you saw the corporate connection in the client connectivity UI. And that's it. I'm done. These are the names of the commandlets: the install remote access, set remote access, set DA client experience settings, executed the commandlets, and finished the configuration all in a matter of a few seconds. You can applaud now.
That was pretty easy, Sharad.
Thank you. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Scott.
All right. Thanks, Sharad. The reason that we want to really focus on how easy The reason we were focusing on the fact that it is very simple and easy to deploy is that customers have told us that even prior solutions from Microsoft had a number of prerequisites that made it challenging for them to deploy the solution in their environment, as well as the support costs and the expense that other third-party solutions require. The idea is that if you and your customers have purchased Windows Server 8, they have what is needed in order to deploy this remote access solution. You don't have to purchase third-party products or third-party agents. As a matter of fact, when the Wizard completed, those policies went through Active Directory, and for Windows 7 and Windows 8 clients, they just became direct access enabled. We didn't have to deploy and install anything. So we believe with this integrated, unified remote access capability, combined with our site-to-site cross-premise capability, that really Windows Server 8 is the best operating system we've out there for enabling this hybrid cloud connectivity. And when you combine it, in particular, with the network virtualization capability that we've talked about during some of the earlier presentations, where you migrate those resources from your private cloud to your public cloud, where they can keep their IP address, it really offers an unprecedented level of flexibility, dynamic capability, and fluidity in your data centers. For those of you that are in the business of manufacturing appliances, or even just customizing servers for particular market segments, we believe we've provided a great set of utilities and tools for you to build on top of. Even the Wizard that Sharad showed, as he mentioned, was based on PowerShell. And what that means is that if you had your own configuration or setup experience that combined connectivity with a number of other things, that the customers wouldn't even have to see that particular configuration screen. We also have the channel and the marketing behind helping you take advantage of this business opportunity that we believe does exist in the marketplace. So with that, we are at the end of our presentation. Since we were late on Thursday afternoon, I did want to make sure we gave you a little time to finish early and have some time for questions. I do ask, if you do have some questions, to come to the mic so that we can capture the questions for the webcast. But besides that, the last point that I'll make is the related sessions. So I mentioned them earlier. The numbers are here. When you combine the remote access capability with our multi-tenant network virtualization capability, the lower level PowerShell that really enables this experience, you really feel that we're dealing with the best cloud optimized operating system out there. So with that, I do appreciate your attendance today. Please fill out the surveys where appropriate, and thank you for your attendance today.